Some prominent Republicans are voicing concerns about illegal immigrants facing family separations at the border. Meanwhile, the administration is making an effort to explain the facts about its actual policy. Joining us now is our headliner, former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer. Sean, good morning to you.
Hey, Sean, can you hear us?
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so if you've noticed, this immigration debate is heating up. Where do you see this ultimately going, Sean?
Well, I think there's clearly a sense of urgency to get something taken care of. The First Lady had it right. We're a country of laws, but we're also a country with a heart. And so we've got to recognize that the people that are coming over the borders, two things that are really important to understand. These countries have an exception, meaning if you come in from Canada or Mexico, we would normally turn back a family and send them back. Because of where they're coming from, we bring them in, we process them, we give them a hearing. And so what happens is because they have broken a law, this is the process by which this is handled. That being said, I think it is now incumbent upon Congress to recognize that we need to find a solution to this broken immigration problem as soon as possible. It's heartbreaking to watch children separated from their families, but we also need to be a nation of laws and to recognize that people who are coming in illegally are not following the laws of our country. So I would hope that with all of these images out there and understanding that we just passed Father's Day and so many fathers can watch these images of children being separated from their mothers and fathers, that they sit down and get action going on a plan to fix what's going on the border.
Sean, do you think that the administration will pay a political price for this, or this will actually spur action?
Well, I think there's two possibilities. One is I think and hope it does spur action on Congress's behalf. Whether or not it pays a price, I don't know. I think the American people, by and large, this is not, I mean, Charles was just talking about this. The president's keeping a pledge he made to be strong and tough on the border and in immigration. So I don't think this is a shock to anybody in terms of the president following through on what he said he would do. But this is a guy who knows how to get results. And on so many other fronts, he's walked up to the cliff, he's looked over it and said, I'm going to do this in action, and demonstrated that he's willing to do things that other politicians wouldn't do to get a result.
Meanwhile, the former First Lady Laura Bush decided to weigh in on all this. She wrote an op-ed. It was published in the Washington Post. She writes, I appreciate the need to enforce and protect our international boundaries, but this zero-tolerance policy is cruel. It is immoral, and it breaks my heart. And, Sean, it's really bringing up the opportunity to look back at the origination of this policy, or at least what the president's policy is modeled after it. And it goes back to the Bush years, and it was doubled down during the Obama years.
Right. I mean, the fact of the matter is, as I've said, and everybody's kind of pointed out, that this is a law. And if you break the law, I mean, if you think about it, if you're a U.S. citizen and you break the law and go to jail, you don't bring your kid to jail with you. And so as cruel, as difficult it is to watch these situations, that's the law that's on the books right now, and it should, as I mentioned, give some sense of urgency to Congress to recognize that we need to fix the system at the border in several ways. One is to look at how we're letting people into this country, whether or not that in itself needs to be wholly revised in terms of how we process people who cross the border illegally. Two is our overall policy in terms of how many people, when they get in, the types of visas we issue, et cetera. But there is a need to deal with this problem, and these images make it very clear that the time to deal with it is now.
Meanwhile, we are expecting to hear from the Inspector General himself, Michael Horowitz, today, as well as the FBI Director, Christopher Wray. Certainly an opportunity after a weekend of reaction poured in to the actual public release of that IG report. Sean, what do you expect to learn from these two as we hear them?
Well, I think and I hope that by some direct questioning by members of Congress, we'll have a little better understanding as to what they gleaned, why they came to the conclusions they did, and why they feel that in the case of President Trump, that all of the actions that we've seen, the text messages, et cetera, from Peter Strzok to Lisa Page, that why the IG determined that there was no bias. I'd like to hear directly from him based on the text messages. It certainly sounds like some in the Bureau clearly had it out for President Trump and his campaign.
You know, Sean, I mean, how can they possibly, how would they characterize those text messages, especially between, as the president says, the two lovers? I mean, and not say that there was any bias. I mean, it was just unbelievable, saying blatantly, we will stop Trump from becoming president. How do they possibly defend that and say it's not part of the investigation?
Well, and that, right, and that's what I think, in particular, Mr. Horowitz is going to need to explain, because I don't see how a text which is very explicit, we will do everything we can to stop him, and then on the other hand to say, yeah, but I didn't have any bias in this. I mean, by the nature of exactly what he said, it proves that he had it out for President Trump and his campaign. I don't understand how you can come to that conclusion, but I look forward to hearing how the Inspector General is able to discuss that.
Yeah, maybe he's got to do some tap dancing later on today, so we'll see. Sean, thank you.
Thank you, Sean.